Smith with United Co-op on this morning's Expert View. We're going to run through a quick last-minute planter inspection today of things to look for before we are able to go to the field. Starting off, once you get the planter hooked up to your pulling tractor, we would fold this planter out, engage it with the ground, and first thing we want to look at is how that seed unit rides. We want to make sure that seed unit is at least level to slightly running uphill. That helps us maximize ground contact with all key components of our row unit and ensuring that we get a very good seed trench cut with the discs and seed trench closure and pressure with our closing wheels. Second, we want to move to our transmission tire pressure. Oddly enough, had a customer call a few years ago that one half of his planter was planting at a higher population than the other half. Ended up being that the tire pressure on the lower population half of the planter was actually 4 pounds lighter than what the book specifies. So on that, please check your owner's manual on what specific tire pressures in each wheel you should be running it at. Very important that we have those in the right range that they need to be. Next, whether you're running chains or if you're running electric drives, but anything with chains, we want to be sure that we've got correct tension on the chain, that we replace needed chains so the links aren't binding, and that the sprocket and the tension arms move freely, even inside of the row units. Double check all those, that everything's running straight and that we're not skipping across any sprockets. We're going to move around to the front here and start up front. With the way this planter is set up, we have a set of floating trash whippers with a row unit mounted wavy coulter. So trash whippers, number one, it's great to have a set of floating trash whippers versus fixed because it allows them to follow the contour of the ground, and we can still adjust where they bottom out based on no-till or conventional till. Ideally, we would bolt on a hub on the outside of these whippers to act as a gauge wheel to minimize actually how deep these are able to penetrate. Would be an even better setup. Really, the Cadillac setup is there are systems on the market that allow us to control the height and ride of these whippers from the cab, but they work extremely well to help minimize hairpinning and especially high yield corn-on-corn systems from last year. We keep residue out of the furrow and improve our germination. Next is looking at adjusting the depth setting on that wavy coulter that we use, especially in no-till systems, is a great way to loosen up the soil, create a favorable environment for the seed discs to come through and lay that seed in the bottom of that trench. However, when we set this planter down, we want to ensure that the bottom depth of this wavy coulter is still between 1/4 and 1/2 inch higher than the bottom depth of our seed disc. That ensures that our seed disc and the bottom of our furrow is firm and that we're not going to be trapping air below that seed that we drop in that furrow. Moving back into the middle part of the unit, you're going to see here I've got 2 business cards with 2 yellow marks on them. So a great way, number one, these are new seed discs because the prior seed discs were a narrower diameter than the required 14.5 inches for this planter, which anytime we fall below that 14.5 inch, we want to replace those seed discs. But then there are shims on the back of those that allow us to either tighten them or take tension off of them. But we take a measurement by sliding a business card, hopefully not from your United salesperson, from somebody else that you're not a fan of, from the bottom and the top, and we make a mark, and each OEM company will give you in your owner's manual a measurement of what the acceptable contact area of that measurement will be. So very simple, inexpensive way to measure that, taking 2 business cards from the top and the bottom, and refer to your owner's manual on that. So when we look at our gauge wheels running alongside of our seed discs, We want to make sure an easy way, number one, that they flow freely up and down, and when we spin them, we want them to make 1, maybe 2 revolutions and come to a stop. If we give those gauge wheels a spin and they sit and spin, we want to take the washers, the thrust washers out and shim out so that we can tighten them up and get more tension on here, because we want a good solid contact between the gauge wheel and the seed disc to ensure that we get a very nice sharp seed trench cut with our seed discs and maintain pressure on the edge of that soil with the gauge wheel. Next up, you'll see that this planter is outfitted with seed firmers. Again, these are great tools to help us make sure in all tillage systems that whether it's a corn seed or a soybean seed, that our seed makes it to the bottom of the trench, that seed disc cut, and that there are no air pockets underneath it to harbor diseases and drive infection and loss of seed germination and loss of yield at the end of the year. So an easy way to check those is to fold your planter out, lower it to the ground to make contact with your seed discs, and simply raise these up a few inches. And when we let that go, that firmer should smack on the ground and hold. It should not hit the ground, make contact, and bounce. If it does that, we need to increase our tension on that because we want it to lay down on that concrete, make contact, and stay in place. And last but not least, looking at our closing wheels, number one, we want to make sure that when they are on the ground and engaged with the top of soil, that they are aligned with the center of the seed trench so that we have equal pressure to close firm and crumble that seed trench over the top of that seed. Number two, you'll see these are some aftermarket closing wheels that we've got on here, and take your pick depending on your soil type. The main focus that we want to look at when selecting a closing wheel is for our soil type and our type of lack of tillage or tillage that we're performing, whatever we're comfortable with, to close that furrow, firm up the ground over the top of that seed to minimize any air pockets that we have, and units like this or a Spader closing wheel, to help us take out in clay soils any kind of sidewall that we may have put in with that seed disc if we get into tacky spots of the field. So that is a quick run through of some key last minute things to look at on your planter before we go to the field this spring. Any additional questions, please refer them to your local United Co-op agronomist. Thank you.